Can President Trump actually order American companies out of China? What is Steve Bannon's new film, Claws of the Red Dragon, all about? And why does he describe Chinese telecom giant Huawei as the greatest national security threat we have ever faced? How does President Trump differ from previous presidents, both Democratic and Republican, in his approach towards China? What did previous administrations fundamentally misunderstand about China and the ruling communist regime? And what is the role of Wall Street and Western business leaders in funding and empowering the Chinese Communist Party? And how can we expect the Hong Kong protests to play out? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Today we sit down with Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist to President Donald Trump, and former executive chairman of Breitbart News. We discuss how, in Bannon's view, the Chinese communist elites have gained power and wealth through access to Western capital and technology, and used that power to stifle dissent and advance its self-serving global ambitions. And we look at the threat of Chinese telecom giant Huawei and its ties to the People's Liberation Army, which are spotlighted in a new film produced by Bannon called Claws of the Red Dragon. Steve Bannon, excellent to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Listen, thank you so much for having me.
Steve, so in September, you're going to be releasing Claws of the Red Dragon, a film that's going to expose Huawei, the Chinese telecom giant. Tell me more.
Well, one of the issues about Huawei, it's the technological arm of the PLA. It's the driver in 5G and quantum computing throughout the world. And whether it's Western Europe, Canada, the United States, or Australia, people, particularly citizens, don't really understand what's in back of Huawei. The deception, what's been in this indictment, and it's so the new Tang Dynasty TV was making a pilot for the beginning of a series. I got involved a couple of months ago, and I said, listen, this is exactly what the Canadian people and the American people need to see, which is a drama, not a documentary, that goes in a very dramatic, great acting, great photography, great music, to really allow the citizen to understand what the situation is with Huawei. So I'm very excited. This is a very powerful film. It talks about the arrest of the chief financial officer, who's also the daughter of the founder. I think it opens up and explains in a dramatic form exactly what's going on with China's encroachment into the technology area throughout the world. People will be shocked when they've seen it. We've already tested it with some people. I've tested here in the United States in Washington, D.C. Yes, I've had a couple of test screenings of the rough about a month ago, tested it with some fairly senior people in the U.S. government, and they were stunned by some of the revelations in the film. And so that's why I told Dr. Joe, about we've really got something I think very powerful here. And what I'd like to do is make a big deal about the opening in Canada. And what I'm doing right now, I'm fielding calls from all throughout the world, Australia, Europe, in the United States, to cut distribution deals so the entire world can see this. I think they're going to be very, very impressed.
That's incredible. And Dr. Joe Wong, of course, the president of NTD Canada, our sister media. I'm going to read something that struck me in the press release, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. I mean, you describe Huawei as the greatest national security threat we have ever faced. That's America. I mean, bigger than nuclear war? This is quite the statement.
No, because here's why. The future of all technology, the backbone of the future of technology is 5G. It will be a dominant technology. Right now, the path that Huawei's taken as a front for the PLA is to basically take over the networks and the components throughout the world. If we allow this to happen, even for a couple more years, Huawei is going to control basically the communication systems of the West, and therefore will be able to control the West. Even as bad as nuclear weapons are, and they're terrible, and even as bad as some of the opponents that we've had has been terrible, that has been fairly localized, the damage that could be done. Right. This is something that could actually, and it can do it in a stealth manner. Remember, we're in 2019, and we're finally having the conversation about Huawei because the CFO was arrested in Canada, within the past year. Up until then, if you go to Europe, you see Huawei in the billboards, you see Huawei in the stores. There's been absolutely no discussion. The elites have let down the citizens of both Canada, the United States, and Western Europe. And now this film is the beginning of the exposure of that.
So, to your point, I looked on the Huawei's website, and Huawei claims to currently serve 3 billion people around the world.
Yes.
It has almost 200,000 employees. 170 countries, penetration in 170 countries. I had someone, an old student of mine, text me and say, hey, all our cell towers in around Vancouver are Huawei. Is that a problem? Wow. It feels like it's been under the radar. How did this happen?
Well, one of the things, there's an indictment out there. The reason she's under house arrest in Canada today was this indictment. They want to extradite her to the United States. This indictment, when you read it, and here's the thing, nobody in this town's read it. Okay. I'm talking about people in power have not read it. You've got to go read, and we're going to put it up on the website. You've got to read the indictment of Huawei. It starts back in 2007. I mean, this has been a history of their nefarious activity for quite a while, and it has never really gotten exposure, really hasn't gotten any media exposure. Part of that is the misinformation campaign that the Chinese Communist Party